Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well by God's grace. So today I wanted to talk about a very important topic in our daily lives, something that helps us become way more closer to God than we already are. And that is Melchizedek. So most people might be wondering what Melchizedek is. I've always had the doubt of what Melchizedek is. So is it a person? Is it something else? So generally what Melchizedek is, it's an order. It's an order where pastors, you have the priesthood, and there is the kingship, you have domains, you have dominions. Okay, it's an order where all of these come together, where you're given the power to rule over nations, and you're a pastor at the same time, which is why it's just so much better than any other priesthood that we have. So what is Melchizedek in essence? What does the word Melchizedek mean? So Melch is king and Sedek is righteousness. So Melchizedek means the king of righteousness. It is an order, it is a priesthood where kingship, dominion and priesthood become one. Melchizedek is an order free from law, because Abraham had no law when he received the order of Melchizedek. So most people will be wondering, when did Abraham receive the order of Melchizedek? Is after he fought the battle with 5 kings and he had won the battle, he came back and he was met by 2 kings. One of them is the king of Salem and the king of Sodom. And the king of Salem is Melchizedek, the king of righteousness. And he broke bread with the king of Salem, and which is a communion. He had communion with the king of Salem, and he received the priesthood, and he was able to recognize that Melchizedek priesthood, and he was able to recognize that Melchizedek, and he gave 10% of all of his winnings. He had tithed. That was the first time tithe is mentioned in the Bible. And Abraham had tithed to the king of Melchizedek. He was able to recognize God, and he was able to honor God, and that is one of the main reasons of Abraham. Abraham is always able to recognize God. Abraham's relationship with God is so perfect that no matter wherever God is, might be in any form, he's able to recognize God, and that is something that we need to have. That's a relationship that we all have to achieve with God, is that wherever God is, we should be able to recognize him. So coming back to Melchizedek is the order free of law, as in it does not mean that you're independent of the law. Melchizedek actually increases the amounts of law that we have. Melchizedek is in the New Testament. In the Old Testament, like for example adultery. In the Old Testament, if you commit adultery with a woman, that is a sin. In the New Testament, if you look at a woman with lust in your eyes, that itself is a sin. And that is how the order of Melchizedek is. It does not mean that, most people think that free from law is I can do anything I want, at the end of the day I can come back and say sorry and God please accept me, and that will happen. No, in the order of Melchizedek, you willingly will hate sin. In the early priesthood, people would never hate sin. They would just refrain themselves, in fact control themselves from doing sin because it's a sin. But in the Melchizedek, in the priesthood, what we do is that we willingly refrain ourselves. It's like nobody has to force us from refrain ourselves from doing sin. And that is the level of love that the priesthood of Melchizedek can give us. It is an order in which we can enter, where God is our anchor, where God is our refuge. And it's that you're not independent of the law. You're dependent on righteousness. So don't think that you don't have law. You have righteousness. And in this priesthood, you're given power, where you're not powerful, but you have God's power, and with which you can rule the world. You can have dominion over every domain in the Melchizedek priesthood. And no devil, when you're in this order, no devil can touch you, no lust, no sin can touch you. Okay, and what happened? And the main thing that you get from this order is you'll get wisdom. You'll be wise enough to handle every one of your problems. So what is Melchizedek? What happened with Abraham? After his encounter with King Melchizedek, Abraham is met by another king, the king of Sodom, who offers Abraham riches in exchange for his men. And that is as appreciable or as admirable as that might sound, that is not a blessing. In fact, losing your men, like losing your manpower, is one of the worst things that can happen to a man. And that is known by any, usually business officials have their manpower as one of their biggest stakeholders. So losing your manpower is very bad. But during that time, the riches obviously weighed more, because labor was very cheap, and riches obviously weighed more. But Abraham was wise enough, after his encounter with Melchizedek, Abraham was wise enough to reject the king of Sodom, saying that when I am rich, nobody should look at me and say that they had made me rich. The credit to my richness, the credit to my well-being should only come from God. And that's a wonderful revelation. You know, like whatever happens, like people should not look at me and be like, I am nice. People should not look at me and be like, oh, she was nice because her mom helped her, her dad helped her. But in fact, they should look at me and be like, oh, she is that good because she is with God. And that is what happens when you're in the priesthood of Melchizedek, is that you're filled with Jesus. You're filled with Jesus, that everybody who looks at you, everybody who sees you is able to see Jesus. And that is what the priesthood, when you're in the priesthood, that is what it does to you. You're in Jesus, you're about Jesus, you're all for Jesus. Okay, in this priesthood, okay, you will never have a failure, because you're always trusting in God. Because in this priesthood, you will not accept a failure to be a failure. Okay, you cannot be like Abraham waited for 100 years and he never thought of it as a failure. He was like, my God will give me. That is why when the two angels and when God himself had come to his doorstep and were prophesying, Abraham completely believed it, because he was in the order of Melchizedek, because his faith, his relationship with God meant to him more than everything else, that when you are in this priesthood, you will not take no for an answer. You will wait upon God earnestly. You will be like, I know my God will bring me my victory. I know my God will come and fight for me. I know my God will do this for me. And you will wait until God does it for you. You will not wait until something happens. You will not be looking for signs whether your doors are opening. You will not be looking for signs whether the Red Sea is parting. You will confidently stand there and be like, I know my God will come and save me. Because you're in the Melchizedek priesthood. You're not in the Aaronic priesthood. You're not following laws. You're directly following Christ. You know, when you're in the Aaronic priesthood, you're following laws. You're following rule books, one after the other. So many rule books. And trust me, you cannot follow every one of them, because they are so perfect. They are not rules of the human level. They are rules to meet God's standard of holiness, and we cannot do that. We can never do that, and which is why Christ died for us. The main reason that Christ died for us is because we cannot match God's level of holiness. And what we do is, through grace, we can enter the order of Melchizedek, where we can become co-heirs with Christ. So in Melchizedek, we are co-heirs with Christ, and we are one with Christ, and that is what happens. And as we all know, we know that the law or the letter kills, but the grace is coming to make us live righteously. In the word there is grace. God's word has grace. Do not take it for letter by letter, but have it, read it with love, do it with love. When you're in Melchizedek, it's all about love, grace and righteousness. That law sort of goes out. It's no longer something like there's a superior to you and you're being below them and you're following them. It sort of becomes a father-son relationship. You get the same relationship that Jesus has with the Father is the same relationship that you will get with the Father when you're in the Melchizedek priesthood, because Jesus is a priest of the Melchizedek priesthood, and when you're in the Melchizedek priesthood, you're also a priest of the same priesthood. So this is just an introduction. Stay tuned for part 2, where we look at Hebrews 7, where the Melchizedek priesthood is explained beautifully. So please stay tuned for part 2. Thank you.